Hello everybody and welcome to this magical episode of On Screen. I'm your host Dylan Wright and I'm here to take you on a fantastic journey through film and television. So, the Harry Potter series has been a very big part of my life, and I know it's been a big part of a lot of other people's lives. And since Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the latest of J.K. Rowling's expanded universe for Harry Potter coming out, I thought it would be a great time to talk about the adaptation process from book to film, touching on, of course, the Harry Potter series as they had, now 9 movies that have been adapted from the books, but also some other series like The Hunger Games or books that have been adapted to death like Pride and Prejudice. With this latest film, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, it's based off of kind of a side novel that J.K. Rowling wrote that kind of takes place within the Harry Potter universe. It's a book that's mentioned within the series itself. I think maybe Harry or Hermione might be reading it at some point. But the book itself is kind of just like almost an encyclopedia of different magical creatures and where to find them. It seems like the movie's going to do like a original story. It's just, taking the author, Newt Scamander, played by Eddie Redmayne in the movie, and sending him on an adventure through America to try and capture the beasts that have been released accidentally that were under his care. So that kind of brings up the topic of when does an adaptation become not an adaptation? When does it become kind of just its own thing and it's only just really tangentially connected to the book that it's supposed to be based off of? I mean, you have a film like Sleepy Hollow that was done by Tim Burton back in the 90s. If you look at that compared to the original story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving, there's almost no direct correlation besides the character names and the situation. I mean, you have Ichabod Crane being this detective when in the original short story he was this school teacher who was afraid of everything. You have, all these murders and deaths that happen within the movie of Sleepy Hollow, but in the short story, the only death, and even that is called into question, is Ichabod Crane's. He kind of just disappears, and the possibility might be that he just ran away in shame and fear, that he kind of was fooled by this creature that was supposedly chasing him. But with any adaptation, it's really important that you keep the main part of the story if you want to be considered an adaptation. I mean, you could take artistic license. You can't just do like a word-for-word reenactment of the book. It's not going to work because there's some things that work on page that don't work as well on screen. Take, for instance, in the movies of The Hunger Games, Katniss Everdeen, the main protagonist played in the movies by Jennifer Lawrence, is this stoic individual who doesn't show her emotions on her face most of the time. In the books, we can see her inner thoughts. We know what she's thinking. We know her thought process on why she's doing what she's doing. In the movie, we just see Jennifer Lawrence not emoting, doing these actions that we're not quite sure what she's trying to do. Especially in the first Hunger Games movie, we see her thought process in the book about why she's going to save Peeta, whereas in the movie, we just see her yell out for Peeta. We see what the audience in the book and the movies is supposedly seeing. And I mean, that works on a different level than what it would in the books, but if you're trying to be faithful to the book, it kind of takes away some of Katniss's character that was considered important for her development and into this partnership with Peeta. And with the Harry Potter books, there's a lot of things that have been taken out because there's just not enough room in the film to include them. And the directors might have seen them as being kind of just irrelevant or they don't connect with anything, even though they find out later that it might be really, really important that they had put that in there, but they didn't. And with adaptations today especially, it's gotten to the point where there's just so much material that needs to be put into a book for the fans to really love it that they have to split it into 2 parts, like with the Harry Potter series. I mean, Deathly Hallows was split into 2 parts, even though it's not the longest book in the series. That's Order of the Phoenix, which definitely suffered from having to condense most of its material down into 1 movie. And you have movie series like Twilight. You have The Hunger Games. Mockingjay was split into 2 parts. You have the Divergent series where Allegiant was split into 2 parts, but the second part now is going to be like a TV special, I think, because of the lack of interest in continuing the series for the fans, I guess. And that's kind of the folly of dragging out, a movie, because what happens with splitting it in 2 is that you need to be able to tell a contained story within each of the 2 parts, but you also need to set up for the next part of the movie. Like, you can't just have a movie just end abruptly in the middle of a scene because you need to continue it in another movie. It needs to tell its own story and hold up on its own so that a regular person could just go in and watch it. Something really interesting about adaptations are that there could be a good adaptation, but it could be a bad film. Or it could be a great film but a bad adaptation. Or it could be both a great adaptation and a great film. Faithfulness and the quality are not necessarily hand in hand. For instance, you have The Prisoner of Azkaban for Harry Potter. That's a great film, but it's not the most faithful to the books. There's a lot of liberties that are taken within Prisoner of Azkaban that the books never had in them. But it's still considered one of the best Harry Potter movies because of how well it's directed and how imaginative it is and how really interesting to watch it is. Then you have a movie like Watchmen, directed by Zack Snyder, who I now hate for giving me Batman v Superman, that's based off of the graphic novel by Alan Moore, and it's almost panel for panel faithful to the comic book, but it's not the best movie in the world. I mean, there's parts that it drags, there's overly, ambitious parts that just kind of don't work, some of the effects are a little lame, and it's not like the best movie in the world. So it's possible to have like a movie that's so faithful to its adaptation that it ultimately is compromised because it doesn't capture the essence of what the original novel or comic book or original source material wanted it to capture. And I mean, it's a constant stream of adapted materials. It's almost like a factory where, an author writes a book. Rights to the book are bought. The book is adapted into a movie. The movie maybe becomes a television show. And it just kind of keeps snowballing from there. And it seems to be what is going to happen with the Harry Potter series, where we're just getting more and more things that are being created. Maybe we'll have a Quidditch Through the Ages movie, where we just see the history of Quidditch put on the screen. I know we're having, I think, 3 more Fantastic Beasts movies, which I'm not sure how that's going to work, because if you look at the original book, it's this small little book. It's not even close to, it might take you maybe like a half hour to read if you're a slow reader. Although it's not, the movies aren't staying faithful to the book because the book is more of like an informational kind of encyclopedic type thing and not a narrative. It's going to be interesting to see where they go with this latest installment of the Harry Potter series. And I'm excited to see it. I hope it's good. I'll have to let you guys know what I think of it when I see it in the theaters. But adaptations, to get back to my main point, are really interesting to compare and contrast because there's so many things that can go right with them and there's so many things that can go wrong with them. And kind of deciphering good adaptation versus a good movie is a really interesting topic and one that I really enjoy discussing with people. So now it's time for my Netflix pick of the week. And my Netflix television show pick of the week this week is BoJack Horseman. It's a really great animated television show. Definitely not for kids, but it's great for adults. It's hilarious, but it's also pretty deep at times. It gets really existential at times. And like the cast is amazing. You have Will Arnett as the titular character. You have Alison Brie from Community. It's just such a good cast. And it really makes you laugh and it makes you really think about your life and makes you ponder the greater questions of the universe, while still being hilarious and just a great, fun watch. So that's my Netflix television pick of the week. My Netflix movie pick of the week this week is a Coen Brothers film that I instantly fell in love with when I first saw it, and that's Barton Fink. It stars John Turturro, who is such an underrated gem. Don't judge him by the Transformers movies, because those are not great movies, no matter how much action, CGI stuff you put in it. But anyways, Barton Fink, it's basically about a playwright who needs to write a script for a new movie and stays in this hotel. And basically, I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not going to tell you any more than that. But John Goodman's in it, and he is so sinisterly hilarious in it, and it's definitely a great watch. It's a Coen Brothers movie, so that tells you all you really need to know before you see it. So that's my Netflix movie pick of the week. So that's going to be it for me on this week's episode of On Screen. If anybody has any future suggestions for topics on the show, please put them in the comments below. I would love to hear what you guys want me to talk about. And if you guys are interested in hearing what my top adaptations are, please check out my article in The Woodward for this week, because it's going to be the best adaptations. And I would love for you guys to read that and let me know what your favorite adaptations are. So until next time, take care.